Good morning everyone and welcome on this new video from Casinoberg Channel. Today I will be describing the Panasonic Lumix DC FZ82, which is one of my favorite camera of all time. Nowadays I bought it 2 weeks ago and I'm very happy and surprised about its results. This is one of low budget camera, so also for beginner this guiding will help you to figure out any advantages, maybe some disadvantages from the camera, what you can do with it, and how would the results look on videos and images. I will be explaining the settings about the frame, on the size, also how much capacity the memory card has. You can choose actually. Right now I'm using a 32 Gigabyte SD card. Probably you can place even higher values on it, cards from 64 and more, and then you have to buy and make costs to get it somewhere in the store, separate from the package where you bought the camera. Also the tripod, some reserve batteries, coming with an external charger, and you would very likely need something to cover the microphone with cotton, or having it fixed with clips or a rope or some rubbers so it stays on the camera itself. You can still handle the buttons, because if you don't have some accessories to the camera, you might get disappointed about its results. So always keep in mind when having low budget, also you need to have extra money to buy some spare parts. So today you might think this is a very nice garden I'm having over here. However, actually I'm standing on my grave to explain you more details about this camera. Recently I bought it 2 weeks ago and I'm very happy and surprised with the results. Good morning everybody. You can see a red truck on the distance. I'm there right now. It's on a very busy road, so I could better come more towards the camera. I will be explaining the Lumix Panasonic DC FZ82. I bought it 2 weeks ago and I'm very happy with the results it gives me. So nowadays I will make more descriptions about the video. First of all, starting with the stabilizer. Please turn it off because you don't want the annoying sounds it makes inside the device. While discovering some video functions, you have 30 FPS or 60 FPS on the same resolution, and there's only a difference of 35% from capacity. I would suggest so you would better use the 60 FPS always, because it gives you a better image on movements if you turn the camera around, and also moving from people, cars, several things. I'm almost there, so let's think about what more to say about this camera. I will be making this review today complete, because when I started making it 2 weeks ago, I wasn't completely satisfied with the results. I was talking too slow, and nowadays I also have more experience with it. So probably it would be a good idea to have you listening to everybody, all potential buyers of this camera. So what I can tell you about this Panasonic camera, it actually is one of the cheapest price range. I bought it 2 weeks ago for about 350 euros. in a nearby store. However, I have to get to another province for it. I'm very surprised with the results it can give you, and further on I will be explaining more details about the functions and settings. To start with, while walking on the wet track until over here, I already told you the stabilizer is one of the first things you would have to turn off. When using the camera for normal use, you better use a tripod instead of the built-in stabilizer with software. You could better turn the stabilizer off, and make sure the camera is placed stable. And probably you would also be very liking to use the timing function. Later on I will be explaining more about it with 2 seconds timing. No matter how much experience you have with photographing and making videos, you will need to have to know and understand how much space there is on the card. This one goes to up to 32 gigabytes, and I can make with 45 minutes of video on the 30 FPS setting, I can make 7 gigabytes, and when it's on the 60 FPS setting, I had to use about 10 gigabytes to make 45 minutes of frames. So this camera is very interesting to use on the 60 FPS setting, not only because of the movement, we get more fluently into it, but also it doesn't use double capacity compared to the 30 FPS, which you could already know from the settings. 30 FPS was made on 20 megabytes per second, and 60 FPS on 27 megabytes per second. Both are on the same frame, which has a size from 1920 on 1080p. For example, the ISO values, this camera, it goes from 80 until 3200, and by testing out with the automatical setting, it explained me very easy. You have to use lower values on light locations. So outside, this place would probably need 80 or 200 FPS ISO. When going to dark locations, you would be liking to use 3200 and 1600, maybe 800. However, always keep in mind, you have learned on school, the ISO values, the higher values give you more blur and not the most sharp images. Also, this camera has a small built-in sensor, so you would be using it more with outside and much light, instead of places, dark places inside with less light. Continuing with the ISO values, there is also the diaphragma, which is from the basics to every camera. My first experience with this camera on the diaphragma settings, it would be useful to have a small diaphragma, because while experimenting everywhere, it made me give the feeling the camera itself has to struggle less with a small diaphragma on opening and closing it compared to a large one. So the device was making less strange noises with a small diaphragma than a large one. Now, apart from the ISO values and the diaphragma, I will explain something more about the highlight settings, which is also an optical value that you can enrage on the camera itself. Please make sure the enlightening is balanced out very well, so you could, while making pictures, you could see it even immediately after having made a picture when the highlight function is placed on. It shows you where there was too much light on the frame. I will be giving you a print screen to compare it. Arranging the highlight setting, both for pictures and videos, is very easy done by pressing the scrolling wheel and moving it. Less or more light, it goes by 1/3 steps. Please make sure those setting is balanced out very well, because it's an optical one, and if you have too much light on your frame, you could afterwards not even arrange it anymore on your computer with the software, because it would give completely white space. The highlight function is necessary when making pictures. If there's too much light on it, you would see after having made the picture where there was too much light on your frame, so you could try the picture again on a lower enlightening setting by the scrolling wheel. This optical value depends on what you want, so now the standard 0 point is pretty decent for this picture, and you could make several pictures on different enlightening to afterwards on computer with your software use a high dynamic range for more professional or advanced users. Use a high dynamic range to combine several parts of your image, all on the right enlightening, to have your complete image successfully on a good enlightening. Altogether, it will depend on all your settings by yourself. Place it on, and with movies you can arrange the enlightening. Here it's having a +2 because of I'm standing in front, and here is actually in the shadow. Would you even notice, because so much light now from the background, that there actually is shadow on the floor on this place. So don't never trust the standard setting on 0 point, because then here for this example in front there would be too much shadow if I would be walking here, and over there further on the background there is too much light, so this is not balanced. If you would have to need the background on the best enlightening, then you would have lowered the value. So for example now -3 gives you a better look on the background. Now it's recording on 60 FPS, which I would always suggest compared to the 30 FPS. With every movement from the camera, 60 FPS really is way much more fluently. Jesus Christ, you would have unbelievable with the only 1.35 aspect ratio get so much better results. So from the size being only 35% more, you have way better results on 60 than on compared with 30 FPS. on the same resolution. Think about what more to say about it. After discovering the basics, luckily I have brought a manual with me, so I get some inspiration about the device and how to use it. I would always suggest to, when making movies that have several minutes, probably you should better turn the screen off to save some battery. You could do it by two options, or you could place it completely off. You would discover the button on the bottom right, very easy. Or you press the LVF button and then it changes the screen into the searching frame, the smaller screen built in the camera, so you could still see the same images appearing. The details you have selected are also visible on the small screen. So practically, by making use of this camera, yesterday I was pretty surprised getting home. It still had 67% of the battery. After reading some reviews, people were complaining the 850 mHz battery does not last so very long. However, by being smart and not using the screen too much, recording yesterday over there, I was about there over 2 hours making videos. In total I have 45 minutes of frames on the settings I described earlier. 20 megabyte per second, 1920 on 1080p, which is the highest quality to upload almost, or pretty decent at least. And so with those 45 minutes it had 7 gigabyte, and right now I'm still recording on the same cards, and I didn't even remove the movies from yesterday because there's still so much space. It goes up to 32 gigabyte. Probably you could place even bigger cards in it. However, then you would have to spend and make costs on buying them somewhere. I could tell you the manufacturer, or at least the store where I bought it, didn't give me everything I needed, so I had to buy the tripod somewhere else. And also the batteries, there's getting one included in the package. If you want to have holidays over weekends and make more than several hours of frames, you would probably like 2 or 3 batteries. So I went to an online store, and for a little bit less than 50 euros, about 2 reserve batteries. And the advantage of having those about over there is also it came with an external charger, which can give me everywhere I go a presence about how many percentage the battery still has. All those things I wouldn't be able doing without buying them somewhere else than from the package. So altogether I'm still surprised with the results, and lucky it was a good choice to buy this camera. So it's all about making choices in life. I have bought this cheap one because I'm actually not gonna make a high profession on it. It's just for leisure time things. And those specifics of those higher ranged price devices, I don't need them. Why should I have a microphone attached to the camera if I am not even able or capable of walking away with it? The microphone would have to be too much near the camera. So, and also a moving screen to look at from different angles is just too much, you know. I wouldn't use it, and it's only more risk to get damaged. So for me actually the screen, which is a touch screen on the back side of the device, for me it actually has to be built in. I don't like if it's moving. So this was a very good choice. Even the best choice for the price that I could find at this moment in nearby stores. However, I have to go to another province for it. If it would be too much, maybe I have a solution for it. Place it over the microphone to cover some wind. I guess I would be surprised of how much you could still hear from it, because you could imagine placing this in front of your ear. You could still hear pretty much of the background. and hopefully on the camera it would work to cover some wind. So now the cotton is on the camera. By experimenting, it looks difficult to keep it over there without any attachment. So it would need some rope or rubbers to get it fixed on the tripod. Probably not too much on the camera because you still want to handle the buttons. Or by placing some cotton thing over it, you would have to be sure that it doesn't go away by the wind and that it still remains easy to handle the buttons. You see now it's already, maybe I shouldn't use it anymore today. It was a good idea. However, it has to be solved with some ropes or something, clips maybe, to fix it on the tripod. The movie gets done automatically. Also, what's very interesting on recording movies, I have discovered yesterday, while being over there at the skate park, the autofocus of the sharpness of the lens with going away. And certainly by coming closer, it automatically arranges which part of the frame is most important. Probably it can see it has to fix on my face, on my appearance now, and not on the background. Maybe test by some text of the manual. Use the self-timer on 2 or 10 seconds. You have an option to make it 3 images. While the option to make 3 portraits is on, after 10 seconds it will make a picture, also 12 and 13. So you have 3 pictures in total. This only works with the RAW quality, and discovering on my computer the RAW images are not visible. However, the camera made 2 times the same picture in different format, the normal JPEG and also the RAW. Now, of course, just to give you an idea of what this camera is capable of, at the beginning of this morning over there I used the zoom function. However, I did forget to place a resolution also on the maximum. So now let's try on the 100 Mbps, full maximum resolution, zoom completely over the field 100 meters further and see which details could be visible and how good the quality would probably be better. And it's an interesting fact to make movies, if you're planning on further distance, to have a look, to use the high resolution, because you can still, after the digital zoom of 60 times, after the optical zoom I mean, you could still use the digital zoom, because optical gives you what capacity of the lens can handle, 60 times, and then it's up to you to go digital, maybe into the camera itself, probably better on the computer, to even look closer to the picture. Of course, with a little loss of quality. However, if you have a frame on 4K, which is 4 times as big as the ones on 20K, then it should be a logical thing to have, if you zoom to twice as big, as you have a full picture, and you go digital further on it, like from A5 to A3, 4 times bigger, then it would be still maybe the same quality of the lower resolution, but you would have looked even closer on the total picture. So let's be curious and test it out. Back again to the normal setting, there was something I would like to say about what they have written, the manufacturer, what they have written in the manual. They told me, or anyone who buys the camera, do not use it for professional activities. I was quite surprised by their descriptions, because the first impression they gave me by the sentence was it wouldn't be a very high quality camera, so why would they say don't go on profession with it? Then discovering some functions and certainly the capacity of the battery, probably they would mean don't use it for profession, because you would get disappointed about how much you need it compared to what this device just can give you. It's built for going over on holiday, vacation, to have leisure time, and profession means you would have to use it every day. Probably that's what they're saying. So don't let you disguide or distract by what they're saying. If you want to have a part-time job with the camera, you could perfectly do it very well, and certainly if you have 2 or 3 reserve batteries. So you could take their description for granted, or you could just do whatever you want and have a part-time job also with this camera. Even if they say don't go on professional or semi-professional, if you want to spend a few hours on a job, it's your own choice to have this decent camera. And it's not them who decide what you do with it. You can decide yourself what you have spent your money for and use it, what you're going. Alright, so on previous video I'm regretting of not completely recording it, because the battery actually got completely run out. So luckily I still have a second battery. I bought 3 of them in total. So yeah, let's continue with the video and maybe tell it again what I was talking about, because only the 2 minutes or the 5 minutes or more that I was talking about got delivered to the device. So yeah, now I could certainly understand why they say don't use it for profession, because yeah, even if I didn't charge the battery yesterday after using it 2 hours, and this morning also, so what I could practically say from this battery is after 4 hours of usage, with maybe 1.5 hour of video, is completely done, which is actually a normal thing for a battery. What do you expect from a camera and 850 battery. So what I was talking about is getting maybe ideas of getting into profession. What would I do? Well, maybe this is the 2nd of August, so I have an idea several years already. And even if I had a lot of money and would be very wealthy rich, I don't know if my lifestyle would change anything. This terrain would be exactly the same. I would have bought, even if I had more money, maybe I would still have bought exactly the same camera. So actually I'm not very regretting to say it over, because maybe the first time was a practice, and now after having a drink I will continue explaining. While hitting the like button and subscribing to Casinoberg Channel, there's one more thing you should know about the camera. When it's turned off and if you move it, you could hear the lens moving inside the body. From the moment the camera turned on, the problem or issue gets solved. Issue, problem or bothering you, you should know it's just a part of the camera and not a manufacturing mistake. I would suggest placing the camera inside a case while traveling, so probably you won't even notice.